African Media Initiative's business blog discusses topics pertinent to media businesses on the African continent with business leaders and thought leaders to look at trends, identify opportunities, and examine possible solutions to the many challenges facing media organizations as they try to navigate today's rapidly changing media landscape.
Yeah, if I had $10,000, I'd probably paint my bedroom and then get a very good laptop computer, a very good internet connection, and a very good camera. Simply because you can now, I'm not sure we're there yet as Africa, but you can now, if you think about it, create a media brand that's purely internet based. Now, will it pay you money? I'm not sure it will, but if you think about it, the big media house, the Nation Media Group, talks about the billions of shillings, all right, hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of revenues and profits. An individual doesn't need hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of shillings to be doing very well. Someone like that might do very well on $5,000 a month. Now, where do you get the $5,000 a month? Now, monetizing your brand, if you want to call it that, will be the big question. And so seriously, I would paint my bedroom and get a very good internet connection, very good equipment, because it means I can put content out there that will reach someone. If we go back to what we discussed at some point, which is your niche publications that reach very niche audiences. If you can create that niche for yourself and become the expert in it, then you can imagine how many people follow you. Now, how do you monetize that? Do you create a walled garden of content where people come and pay to be able to access it? Do you put it out on platforms where there's an advertising revenue model? What do you do? I am not sure, but it can work. With a lot more money, then you start looking at the other possibilities, and you'd be shocked that my option may actually be to go into traditional media, right? Good old newspapers, good old television stations, good old radio stations, because there's still a huge mine that hasn't been struck. Because a lot of people are still not interacting with media platforms on a regular basis, and even those that do are not being reached. If you think about advertising, it's still very scattershot. People try and reach huge populations. I think of things like luxury advertising hasn't taken off in Africa, but there's a huge taste for luxury goods and products in this part of the world. Now, the assumption tends to be that your market for big expensive cars is probably 10 or 50,000 people, say, in Kenya, East Africa. So it's not worth it to put out an advert that reaches 10 or 50,000 people. But think about it, if you sell one luxury vehicle, you're probably earning $250,000, right? And so you're going to do 10 of those in a year. That's more than $2 million. So it may be worth it for you to actually go out and figure out a way to reach them. If you think about what people like calling the bottom of the pyramid, it's the same story. So people tend to concentrate on the large middle that's there, so it appeals to everyone, but people don't think about how to reach certain specific parts of the market. So put out a newspaper over there that is sort of reaching that sort of market. You'd be surprised at how people come and respond to you. Same thing can be said for television, same thing can be said for radio, same thing can be said for traditional internet, and I can't believe we're talking about traditional internet, but yes, traditional internet, which is websites that reach a number of people. Now, you get into the brave new world of what they call Web 2.2, which is people responding with their own content. Then again, those are possibilities. No one has yet been able to figure out how to do it. The problem with us is that we tend to look at American models, but American models can be very misleading for one good reason, because the American market is 315 odd million people, meaning that any niche you can think of is worth millions of people. Where they think about it from an ethnic point of view, so black people, there's tens of millions, Asian Americans and whatever others. If you think about the luxury market, if you think about males, females, young people, dog lovers, whatever, there's huge numbers of people in any of those niches in the United States market. So the problem with us is that when you look at that, people try and recreate the same thing here. But here the numbers may not be of the kind that would support what they do there. So where you had, say, pets.com, the famous internet company that flamed and died in the early part of the century, they could do that because the pet market in America, I think, was worth 12 or 13 billion dollars or something like that. The pet market in Kenya, East Africa is not worth that much, but it does exist. Now, you don't reach them through a pets.co.ke. What you try and do is figure out how do you reach them in ways that actually make sense in this market. Our problem is that we tend to, because it's very loud, if you go on the internet, the American set of content, because of language, because of tradition, because of first mover advantage, is very loud in our faces. So people tend to want to recreate what they see out there. So there's facsimiles of eBay and of YouTube and of PayPal and Amazon and all sorts of other things there because they work in that market. Does it work in this one? I'm not saying it doesn't, but you need to think about it from your market's point of view, right? Now, if you do that, you're going to make quite a tidy bundle. And if you imagine when we started speaking about technologies, Safaricom and M-Pesa, it didn't try and recreate something that exists out there. It looked at current reality and said, this is what our current reality is, and this is how we can do it. And they're transforming the markets and they're making quite a tidy bundle at it. Now, if you go about it with that sort of mindset, then you'll be successful. The quick and simple answer is that people need to recognize business for what it is. The problem with the business for us has been formal business. It has been people in suits and ties in the case of men, people who will recognize. But business is business. Business is human interaction. And the instant we recognize that, then it means that people will be encouraged to get into business. If you remember, it's almost going on 20 years, when we first started hearing of Bill Gates, and everyone wanted to be a Bill Gates. They wanted to be the Bill Gates of their particular environment. So someone would say, I want to be the Bill Gates of Kenya, someone would say, I want to be the Bill Gates of healthcare, whatever it is. Simply because it's an example that you look forward to. Now everyone wants to be Mark Zuckerberg, everyone wants to be this and that and that. We even started to get local examples. Someone says, I want to be, someone in Africa probably want to be the Aliko Dangote because he's going out there in terms of his net worth. Point is that young people especially look to people to, one, copy, that's where you start. Then you start developing something of your own. You look at someone and say, I want to be like that person. The more stories you put out there about success in business from a wider perspective, the more people will realize that it's not just one narrow path, which is why when we were growing up, the paths to success were probably 3 or 4, lawyer, doctor, etc., etc., etc. Then business became legitimate because you started hearing all this business stories. So your parents will no longer look at you funny when you say you don't want to work for the government, you don't want to be a teacher, lawyer, doctor, etc. Now it's getting to the stage where your parents will understand you if you say you want to be an actor because Repeater Members won an Oscar, right? They'll understand if you say you want to be a web developer because they've heard somehow of Facebook, of Twitter, etc. They'll understand if you say you want to be a musician. They'll understand if you want to say you want to get any of this other ways, other businesses out there because they can see people who are successful now. Problem is, if my child was to come to me and say, oh, Dad, I want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, I'll say Mark Zuckerberg is American and he's got a unique set of circumstances that led him to be successful. But if I have a story of someone who's made it doesn't necessarily need to be from Kenya, it can be from anywhere in Africa, where the set of circumstances is a lot closer to ours, then I'll say, if this person made it, then maybe my son can make it. Even for myself, I'll tell myself, career-wise, if I'm tired of the media business and I want to get into business X or career X, if you can point me to people who have been successful at that, who come from sort of the same environment as I do, then it becomes legitimate. If these people are invisible, and our problem in Africa is wanting to be invisible, it's a huge problem, if you ask me, where no one wants to broadcast success for whatever reasons, then it becomes that much more difficult to tell someone, by the way, I would like to be this career, I would like to pursue this particular way of working, because they don't know that you can be successful at it. And I think that's a challenge for us who tell these stories, to actually show these stories and show them as successful. So that you have people who can come back and say, yes, I want to be this and I can be successful at it. And when they become successful, hopefully they want to tell their stories. And it sort of becomes a good cycle, as opposed to what we had a long time ago, where the only success stories you had in the village was a village teacher. And so everyone, if you ask children in those days, everyone wanted to be a teacher.